Brian, we didn't talk about that guidance that we got from Drummond Woodsum. Did you read that guidance about the AI recorder that I forwarded to you?
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't crosswalked it with Susan's comments on which piece of that we're talking about yet. We haven't seen anything in there that looks surprising.
The stuff from Justin Carey.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
For
not
the
that. About the recorded notes taker.
Yeah, I mean, his basic argument is it's our platform, and so we can control the platform.
Well, and that someone could put out official record of the notes that maybe aren't reflective of the actual.
Cause confusion.
Yeah.
I mean, that was my concern. I'm not sure that that's a constitution that allows us to shut it down under open meeting law. Right? Somebody could put out 8 minutes and.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I asked in that context, so yeah. I don't know.
I mean, we have an opinion from lawyers. I think we'll go ahead with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it's our platform, the argument that I got to him was if it's our platform, right, we pay for the Zoom subscription.
Yeah.
But for sure, if somebody was sitting there with another computer that was listening to the thing coming off our Zoom, we wouldn't have that control.
Yeah. Yeah. It's 6:02.
Should we go ahead and start?
Yeah, and we don't have Richard, but I assume he'll come along shortly.
Looks like we're off Zoom. Go ahead and call the meeting to order. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I have one proposed agenda adjustment, adding item 7E to the end of the discussion list for the school calendar for the academic year 25-26. Is there a second?
A second.
Any other adjustments or proposed?
I was wondering if we could just talk about the impacts of federal upheavals on our local.
I think that'll come up briefly under the superintendent's report. Is that
Yeah, it's on my list, so we can talk about it there.
Safety or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I would just, yeah. Okay. Anything else? All right, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor of the agenda adjustment? Passes 5-0. We'll move forward to consideration of minutes. I would make a motion to approve the minutes of January 21st as presented. Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion or corrections? We'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor? Passes 5-0.
No.
Okay, no warrants. The floor is open for public comment. Not seeing any coming, so we'll go ahead and move on. Open for acknowledgements. Jake,
Nothing, thank you.
Kevin?
Nothing this time.
I would just like to acknowledge the superintendent and all the team that deal with school closures and postponements and all the teachers who then have their schedules rearranged. I recognize that that's been a crazy time this month and know that it causes all kinds of small changes. So, Noah?
Yeah, I guess I happen to be in the Ace Adams main office, just to pick up for something else, and just like seeing the chaos of that. Well, they're not like their chaos, but just how much they're dealing with. Like it's just an incredible amount of keeping track of all the kids and all the things that they're. I'm just very appreciative of all that work. It's
The organized chaos.
yeah, it's organized. It's like they're making it happen.
Yeah.
So.
Mark?
Nothing.
Anything for you now?
I just want to acknowledge that the Ace Adams Show Choir has started up for this season with their new set Where We Are, and the 5 OHS student directors were hard at work.
Great. Okay. Meredith, anything?
Yeah, I'd just like to acknowledge two things. One, the efforts of all of the staff to put together budgets to bring us to our first conversation tonight around budget. A lot of, buildup comes into starting this process with you. So I want to acknowledge everyone who had a hand, which literally almost everyone has a hand in either submitting something or reviewing it or actually entering it. So lots of people involved in that work. And secondly, I want to acknowledge the high school team and everyone involved in Step Up Day today. From all I hear, it was a successful day and it's a big undertaking. So kudos to that team for job well done.
Great. We'll go ahead and start with the reports. Lisa.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Starting off in the area of special education, we currently have 21 students in the referral process, which is that's a pretty high number. We're also providing some evaluation services for one of our pre-K students that CDS wasn't able to get an evaluator for. A Special Olympics update. Our students in the high school, middle school are having a blast. They've prepared and participated in bocce and had a great time. They're going to the Winter Games next week at Herman Mountain, and they're looking forward to that. They're also both in the middle school and high school preparing for unified basketball right now, and I've heard some pretty nice comments from the student participants and the student supporters. Just what a great event it is, and just it's thrilling for the kids that are involved. So I'm glad we have it going again in Orono. Just a little update since our last conversation about the CDS cohort 2 conversation. I've touched base with some folks at the state, and they're reassuring me that it's 100% state funded. I'm trying to understand how that would work, and we're going to pull Lynn Gray in on the conversation. We're looking at getting an appointment with the fiscal team, Barbara McGowan and Paula Gravel from the DOE, to get their input on how to develop a budget. We've also reached out to VZ to see how it's worked with them. I haven't heard back from them regarding getting together, but we've got some feelers out. Our MLL world is pretty busy and booming all the time. Right now, we've got 37 total. We have 27 students that qualify as intensive English learners, some of which have absolutely no English. And, I was involved in an email chain where, some teachers are feeling a little frazzled when they have a student that comes in with no with no or very limited English and how to communicate, and MLL staff can't be in all those classrooms at the same time. So there's using Google Translate and trying to, just make it as smooth as possible. I was really pleased to hear that our student ambassadors at ASA were helping students out, students that speak the language that these students coming into us were speaking, which was Urdu and Mandarin, I believe, and they were able to have an older friend go in and help with translation in the classroom. And boy, that just, makes your heart sing right there. So 21 qualify for intensive English learners, 11 as academic English, and then 5 are on progress monitoring. So it's a pretty hefty load right now. We're really using our translation services, and that's going great. I saw it used in my office this week, where we had to get a translator to schedule an IEP meeting to meet on a student, and we also had to get some transcription services to send some of our paperwork in and have it transcribed into their native language. So it's a learning process, but we're using it a lot. So very grateful for it. In the nursing field, we're very happy to have Karen Martin back with us. She was out due to surgery, and we had great support while she was away with a substitute nurse. But it's just nice to have Karen's face and smiling face back with us, and hands in there to help us with the kids. So that's it on our end, unless you have any questions.
Thanks. I don't know if it's a question or a comment. I'm just curious if you're hearing anything, but a lot of the MLL growth has been driven by the fact that Bangor is now a refugee resettlement recognized center. And that whole program has come to a screeching halt with the current administration. Just wondering if you've heard any discussion in the schools about how that's going to affect numbers next year. Not going to affect the current students, but in future year or two.
Right. We have no idea, it's definitely, everybody's talking about it. What is it going to look like? Is this, are we going to kind of go back to the numbers we had before? Or, are we staying at the level we're at, or are we going to continue to grow? I think we're probably not going to continue to grow, but that's just a guess on my part. But everybody is asking the same question, and as Meredith said, it's budget time, right? So we're making a plan. We're making a plan according to what we've been living in now. It's really hard to make a plan based on, a lot of these unknown factors.
Thanks. Anything else? Go on to Susan.
Good evening. So 2 things I'd like to highlight from my report and share with you. Really appreciate Rachel printing out hard copies of the report from Sonia Berthazal, where she looked deeper into NWA strands. And I think board members have that in their packet if they want to take a closer look at that. It's also linked electronically to my report. One of the things in conversation with Sonia and some techie whizzes at NWA was advice from them not to go back more than this fall and last fall, because when the names of the strands changed, the groups of skills within those strands also changed fairly significantly. So she did only use fall of 23 and fall of 24 in looking at the strands in those violin plots. I find them really interesting to look at. I'm not sure there's enough evidence there for patterns or big decisions, but one example that really caught my eye is, for example, 5th grade math and the measurement strands. One violin plot is really condensed, and the other from the next year is really spread out and quite a bit thinner. So I think it's definitely something for us to probably have more discussions about in the future and look at more closely, but I appreciate her work doing that. On another NWA line of communications with the company, our teachers had noticed that learning standards, or learning statements rather, were missing from students' profiles when they took the main through-year test. So we're used to being able to click on a student and see their score and then do another click and see some instructional standards that the student needs to work on next. And those are not available for students who take the through-year test. And that was frustrating for our teachers. And when I looked into that further, the written response I got from NWA is, here's how you can find similar material on the main through-year test. It really is somewhat similar, but way more cumbersome to look at and try to find answers to questions about what skills students need next. Basically a list of questions that students got right and a list of questions and types that students got wrong. So you have to kind of infer from that as a teacher where to go with your instruction. I think a bigger implication is the conversation that I was having with the representative, and then she was having a chat with her supervisor, that the chat was in with the sidebars, I think, of her computer, and she was reading some of it out loud to me. She was not willing to put this in writing even when I asked, but basically his response was that they're not willing to put those learning statements on the website for the through-year test because they're not willing to guarantee that the RIT score from the through-year test matches the RIT score and the skills of the MAP growth tests. So I think that's something that we should continue to or keep in mind, especially when we're looking at grades that shift from a MAP growth test to a through-year test. It's also an area that I think is frustrating, and I will reach out to the Main Curriculum Leaders Association to see if they can maybe do some advocacy for us. And I noticed just before I logged in that we have a new representative for NWA, and she sent us an email, us being at least Meredith Higgins and I, this afternoon, and I can reach out to her as well. So that's kind of a recap on NWA and where things stand with the state test at this point. Moving along, the curriculum that we've been working on and developing is now posted on our website. I'm excited to have that available to the public, and board members can find it either through the link I provided, or Rachel helped out a lot with some of the graphics and also helping connect the Google site that I developed. If you go to our RSU 26.org website, you can go under programs and then scroll down to curriculum. I appreciate the curriculum committee's feedback and thoughts around the website and made most of the changes that they suggested. I'm finding that website development is still a learning curve for me, and sometimes I get a little impatient and frustrated. I can't figure out how to do a matrix or table yet, but I'll try again. I had to put it aside for a while. Under learning programs, I have information to add regarding our Title I program and our multilingual learner program, but I haven't had the opportunity to add those sections in yet. So more will be coming, but I'm excited that it's able to be shared with the public, our staff, and I think Superintendent Higgins and Rachel will put that in a newsletter that will go out sometime this winter to the district. And please mark your calendars if you can join us for on March 13th from 6 to 7:30 in the OPAC. We have just signed off today on formally securing Lynn Lyons to come speak to our students in grades 5 through 12, our families the evening of March 13th, and our staff the morning of March 14th. So if you can't make it on the evening of the 13th, maybe you can come the morning of the 14th to see what she has to say to staff. And this has been a really big effort. I appreciate both the Meredith's help in looking into multiple presenters and knowledgeable folks that rely on current research and have a really good way of sharing their message to a variety of audiences around the impacts of social media, smartphones, and how that affects our students, but not just how it affects our students, but what we can do about it. And Lynn will have a theme that runs throughout all of the 4 presentations that she does around durable skills and helping us all help our students develop and hone those durable skills that they need to survive in today's world. So we're excited about that opportunity. Just a quick couple things that aren't in my report. we have people coming from MLTI, the Maine Learning Technology Initiative, to talk with us at ASA and OMS in the high school on our early release day of February 12th around AI in education, ways it can be used with kids, ways that teachers and educators can find it useful, as well as conversation around the ethics and use of AI. So we're excited to be able to bring them to our district. And I met this afternoon with a Chapter 104 group of folks who provided some really good conversation around the programming we currently do, the written descriptors that you see on the website about our Chapter 104 programs, as well as information that I will be reporting to the state. So they have a report due on Friday. I appreciate the building principals and Katie Quirk and Wendy Pearson, as well as Lisa Earhart, who really helped us think about where we are now in our programming for Chapter 104 and advanced students, and offer some suggestions as well as a lens into the good work that's going on. Thanks.
Thanks. I mean, I'd just like to say it's really exciting to see the curriculum up. I've been in this district 14 years now, and I think there has not been a curriculum on the webpage in that entire 14-year period. So and I've heard parents asking about it for those entire 14 years. So that's super exciting to see, and thank you. I know many people put work into that, but I know you especially put a lot of work into that, so thank you. I mean, the violin plots are fun to look at. I'm sure we'll talk about them later, but one thing that really kind of jumps out is less than a third of them are sort of the traditional, like a bell curve on a side where you're tightly packed around a RIT score plus or minus 15 points. And almost 2/3 of them look more rectangular, where you're spread across 40 or 50 RIT points equally. And a couple of them even do start to approach bimodal, which is not what statisticians say is supposed to happen.
No.
And that presents all kinds of challenges in the classroom too. So, which I think many of us have talked about and suspected, but it's kind of nice to actually see that in cold hard data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Is that Lynn Lyons thing gonna be broadcast? Like,
Not
It's-
via Zoom.
it won't be on the
Oh, broadcast, no.
is it in the OPEC?
It's in the OPAC.
But it won't be on the,
It'll be advertised, but not broadcast live.
not on the YouTube kind of thing. Okay.
Right. Sorry.
Anybody else? Imagine if she's a speaker, she wants to have
Yeah.
control over distribution. Okay, go ahead and move on to student report.
I hope everyone's doing well. It's been a while. But starting with school culture, again, I just want to talk about a little bit about the increased update today. And just thank everyone who worked hard to put it all together. Congrats to the staff who won the quiz show and the seniors who won the basketball and volleyball game. Rally.
OMS had a wine themed dance recently.
And OHS held a dance on January 24th. Thank you to the student council for all their hard work.
On to the academics. The new semester just started. Congratulations to all the students who worked hard during midterms week.
Congrats to all those selected for NHS this year. New members recited their pledge last week and will be officially inducted in March.
The juniors have their SAT coming up next month.
OMS has its Q2 recognition breakfast this Friday.
Sophomores have a field trip to UTC next Friday, February 14th.
As for activities, girls basketball had a game with Dexter.
OTO hockey has a game today at UMaine.
Track has its championship meet this Saturday. Boys are seeded to win and girls are seeded to get second.
Cheering will compete at the Class C state championships on Saturday at 2 p.m.
Penobscot wrestling will compete at the regional championships on Saturday at 10 a.m.
Northern Penobscot swim team will compete at the PVC championship on Saturday at 11 a.m.
Well done to both OMS boys and girls during tournament play this past weekend at the PPML B basketball tournament in Glenburn on Saturday. Our boys team is advancing to the PPML finals on Tuesday.
Congratulations to our B girls for winning the PVML sportsmanship banner for 2025.
Congratulations to our OMS chess team who captured the PPML championship on Saturday. Now they should prepare for the state championship.
OHS show choir has been rehearsing.
And again, we're excited to announce that ASA show choir has started up again this year.
The robotics team competed at the first LEGO League Robotics Main State Championship.
The OMS Science Fair Club began meeting yesterday, February 3rd.
And finally, the OMS show choir starting up soon.
That is our report.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments? We'll go ahead and move on to the superintendent report.
I'm just struck that all that's going on. I mean, I can see all this stuff on the calendar, but just to hear it, there's just a lot going on, and it's great to hear all the ways our students are active and involved and having success. So a couple things to start out with related to what Noah brought up earlier, two things specifically. Following some guidance that I received from the Maine Superintendents Association, who got their guidance that they passed along from the AASA, which is the National Superintendent Association, and then also some guidance we received from Drummond Woodsum. I developed some procedures and guidance around potential immigration enforcement, like what to do if immigration enforcement lands on our doorstep, kind of procedures. And then really further guidance for the administrators, because the procedures basically are to, take the name, take the credential, collect any information they have to offer, and then get an administrator and contact the central office, who will then, do any number of things depending on what the information presented is. There's a lot of guidance around what kind of warrants we should look for, a lot of guidance around just reminders about what should be on file, what really should not be on file. Just reminders around records requests and how long we have to respond to those. We don't have to have an immediate response. We can take our time to, make sure we're getting it right, consult with the attorney if needed. So our guidance really mirrors the national guidance and what Drummond and Woodsum put out. It helped us just clarify a few things around where we're keeping certain records, particularly around MLL services. They don't need to be in the cumulative record. So anything like language surveys and all, we're just making sure those are in the MLL files where they belong. So we implemented that, I would say a week and a half ago. A week and a half ago, with all of the office staff were apprised of that, and the administrators are ready. So this is, where we are with that. And we haven't had anything happen in our schools and haven't heard of anything in the area, but we feel like we're prepared in the event. And, basically our role in this is to make sure that we're following, the guidance we've been given, but also protecting the child that's in our care here. So that will kind of be that'll be the approach that we take.
That's good.
Yeah.
Have there been reports of ice showing up at schools?
Yes.
Yeah, in Maine or?
No, just nationally.
Okay.
And I think that, also what changed is when the order came down that rescinded kind of a protection against immigration enforcement at schools, churches, and there was several places like that really also kind of spurred some guidance to be provided and suggestion from our council to just, have procedures ready and inform people what those are. And I think that just, makes everyone feel also, like we're not going to be caught off guard, and we'll know what to do if it occurs.
I guess I know in other places in Tennessee where I'm young, that some of the students have stopped showing up to school. How where we're at, but it's something to be aware of.
Yeah.
How we can support. I don't know. So.
Yeah, I'm going to. I mean, we talked about how widely to talk about this.
Yeah, sure.
Because for some people it will, be a reassurance.
Yeah.
And I decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to write something that's going to go in our newsletter we're sending out next Friday. But as we have learned, those aren't widely read. But hopefully, I just feel like it's important to have these procedures, but I don't want it to be a lightning rod for people to, shine a light on us in a negative way that could draw attention. So it's a balance in that regard. But if we notice truancy beginning or absenteeism beginning, I think direct contact with families would be the way to hopefully answer any questions or concerns they might have. And I'm not aware that we've observed that at this point.
Not the high school, I just did truancy.
On not absolutely related, but just some things that are federally related. There was the funding freeze for all federal funds that was then rescinded. So at this point, we have access to federal funds. We're spending as usual. And we've done some analysis of what are our federal funds, just so we know if there's a freeze that comes out or some kind of change, we are working to identify exactly what those are. Some of them are a little murky, and we have some questions from the state because we know several things that are direct. We know they're from the federal government. There are things that flow through the state. I'm not sure what it would mean for some of those types of, kind of support that aren't exactly funds coming into our accounts in the same way. But the big piece is we have some grants that we get every year that are almost like entitlement grants. And then the National School Lunch Program. And then we have a really big grant. It's just a special one-time grant. It's the COPS grant. And those are the main, buckets that we have of federal funds. So, we're just going to keep spending and keep doing the things we're doing right now. And then we'll talk more as we get into budget time about, potentially what might happen if funds were frozen again and what would our contingencies be. And Brian, I talked a little bit about that. We feel like there's some options in front of us.
What percent overall?
Sorry?
So the overall percent of that of the whole budget is
Well, the federal, they're not in the budget.
Yeah.
Because they live outside the budget.
Sure.
But it's our every year funds that we get that are federally tied are around 560,000 that are mainly around the ESSA grants that Susan deals with around Title I, Title II, and then the special ed IDA local entitlement grant that Lisa administers, and then the National School Lunch Program subsidy that helps run our food service program make up that 560,000.
So that's about 3%, about a third of our budget.
Thanks for doing the math.
And we have cash reserves, as we heard at the audit last time, of 2.7 million, so. It's hard to see an imminent crisis, right? Longer term, nobody knows what's gonna happen. We're gonna have to wait and see how things unfold, and we'll have to react as things become more definite, but short term, it's hard to see a crisis that forces us to change our behavior significantly.
That is reassuring. Do you further know, the state funding that we receive through the word or acronym, I still don't know after 2 or 3 years on this board, and the main appropriations, is that purely raised in the state of Maine, or is any of that kind of?
That's state money.
That's
All right. So it really is only about 3 or so %, like worst case scenario.
Where it might hit us is like, we get money from the state for school lunch, which probably comes from a federal grant. We get money for the state for special ed, some of which probably comes from a federal grant. Back when we had ESSER funds, that was a bit of an exception with COVID, but now we have the COP funds for school safety, right? Security. Those are the kind, well, no, that's direct to us, but so it's indirect block grants for the state that could.
Yeah, like Ben was telling me today about this additional program that we're a part of that is run by the federal government, but it's a variety of things. It's like preferred vendors, it's subsidy if you buy from these vendors that they're, you know, supporting and trying to promote certain types of, diverse food preparation and menu items, things like that. That we're not clear exactly where those fall in the federal funds because they seem to come from the feds, but they're state also. So there's like, that's a murky area that I think we would have more questions about if there was any kind of freeze, but those are smaller buckets than the ones I described.
Thanks.
Another thing I wanted to just bring to your attention because it's going to be coming to you in about 6 weeks is every 3 to 5 years we have to bid our transportation services. And we are at the end of our 5-year bid cycle with our current vendor. And so we've put out a bid for transportation services for the next 3 to 5 years. And the bids are due at the end of this month. And we'll review the bids and bring a recommendation to you in March at our, I think, March 11th meeting. And, one thing I added to the contract was something that came up with the work we did in conjunction with the town is asked for a new requirement in there of a swing arm capable kind of bus because those are available. And so I put that in the specs and just a few other kind of financial business kind of things that Lynn and Derek and I talked about. So hopefully, I expect there will be probably some cost escalation because a lot has changed in 5 years since we had this contract. But what I really hope is that we have more than one vendor because I think competition is good.
That was my question. We've never
I
had
mean,
more than one.
Derek has had at least one other reach out to him for some, information. So we'll see, hopefully. And then finally, I just want to follow up on the Power School breach situation, just update you on what's happening, what's happened since we last met. I've been working on an email for students and some follow-up training, and the schools are working on their plans for how they're going to follow up with some just further information and education for students around, cybersecurity breaches, phishing, scams, that kind of thing, and basically why they should be interested in this identity theft protection that's being offered to them. And that will be sent out in the next few days. The email and then the training soonish after. We have sent an inquiry into our cyber insurance carrier to seek their advice on several things. One is around how to best do the supplementary notifications that we talked about because actually, let me back up. The Power School, it's relatively clear to Jason and I through the communications that we can get out of Power School that the notifications are going to be vague. They're not going to be specific. So they're not going to give information to Kevin Roberge about what Kevin Roberge's children's information specifically different from Jake Edwards' children. So the supplemental notifications that we would do would have to give that. And so I think it's important to get some guidance on how to do that right and how to do it in a way that doesn't open us up for issues. So that's one thing. And the other thing is around, getting their feedback and advice around kind of the idea of pushing back against Power School or offering more than 2 years of identity protection. So that's another thing. And then finally, Jason says that he does think that like an audit of our security, network security and systems is something offered through our insurance program. So we're going to start arranging for that to take place as well. So we're working on it. getting any information on a power school about this is really difficult. They, basically won't talk to you. They just direct you to their FAQs, and I'm sure they're being told to stick to the script and not do anything except the FAQs. So I think it will take an attorney getting involved with us through our insurance carrier to get any kind of movement on requesting more than the 2 years. So any questions or updates about these updates?
That's something so is that something you're thinking of going down that?
Right, that's through our carrier. So they have attorneys that we'll work with that are for this
Yeah.
particular. So if we went off and used our own attorney, it probably wouldn't be covered. So we need to use their attorneys for this. But I need to start with the insurance carrier and say, these are all the things we want. So we've sent an inquiry out. We're waiting on them to say, okay, let's do X, Y, and Z now. Okay, those are all my items. We have a lot of things to discuss ahead, though.
I would just say that's a big lift to respond to that crisis on top of everything that's happening all the time, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, and Jason and Melissa have done a lot also with this, but always balls in the air. It's the nature of the work. So.
Anything else? All right, we'll go ahead and move on. First discussion item is we're cycling through the schools for in-depth presentations. OHS, you're on.
Do you want me to share the presentation or do you want to share? Either way is fine.
Share it. Yeah, as long as you have the, like the live view.
Me?
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Do I have the live view? Do I need the live view?
Well, I made some edits this afternoon and stuff. Okay.
I downloaded it right before the meeting, but
Okay.
I'll find the live view really quickly, just
Okay.
to be safe. I could tell that we'll make we'll make sure we're on the same page here. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for this chance to offer a portrait of the ebbs and flows that are happening under the surface of any given day at OHS. Our hope is that from this presentation, you will have a better understanding of the realities that our students are living and the realities that teachers are navigating on a daily basis. So as you know from our work on our strategic plan, the question of engagement is one that is looming at the center of our work as a district, and the high school is no exception to that. And so the frame that we have used for this presentation is one that we are using throughout the building, which is where is there evidence of engagement that we can fuel and support, and where are there obstacles to engagement that we can tackle in an effort to improve the experience of students in the building. This logo on the right is a product of the messaging committee. Rachel's generous graphic design. This frame of Think Boldly, Act Kindly, Be You is one that this recruiting season we have used in our conversations with regional middle schools. It was generated from discussions with, excuse me, students in classes, and then a revision cycle that, you know, landed us at this as an assertion about what makes Orono unique. And in our discussions about the significance of this on our recruiting visits, we've talked about our collective emphasis on community and how the community of Orono High School is really unique and supportive and attentive to the needs of each individual, but not in a way that asks for assimilation, not in a way that asks for students to adapt to the community that we have, but instead elevates each individual with the belief that the more we are each who we are, the better our community is going to be. So the question of attendance is one that, you know, we have been circling around as a district since the pandemic in particular. And this is a portrait of the reality that we have been living for so far this school year. So two frames that we use for this are chronic absenteeism and truancy. Chronic absenteeism is at any point in the year, dependent upon how many days school has been in session, because it is in absence of greater than 10% of the days we've been in attendance. Truancy is about really the reason for the absence. 10 or more unexcused absences count as truant. So as you can see here, we have 20% of our students who are chronically absent throughout the first semester. Before today, we had 10 students who qualified as truant, but Sam running truancy today added 4 to that list. As you may imagine, meeting the needs of students who are in the building is very challenging. And so this is one of the primary obstacles to engagement that we face. At present, we have 50.4% of our student body with a 504 or an IEP. Including the students Lisa referenced today who are in referral, which she said identified as 5 or 6 OHS students. If we go with 5, that number in the bottom right goes to 52%. That is the highest percentage since my time in the district that we've had concentrated at the high school in terms of unique learning needs. You know, when we talk about that bimodal achievement distribution, you know, this is one of our primary challenges. The vast majority of our students with learning needs are distributed among regular education classes. There are many classes in this building where the percentage of students with a 504 or an IEP is greater than 50%. And so that presents acute challenges for teachers in our classroom. That number on the bottom left, 19 students with a behavior plan or a behavior protocol. That is not something that I have reported on before because it has not been something that has had the role in the building that it has now. That is a number of students, that reflects the number of students in the building for whom we collect behavior data, for whom we have directives to teachers about what sort of flow chart we'll follow if certain behaviors manifest, what sort of rewards will be given. This to me as an educator is a post-COVID or a screen-based lifestyle phenomenon that is presenting an added layer of challenge to teachers in our building. Our McKinney-Vento population is growing. 6 students currently identify as McKinney-Vento, which is our phrase for homeless students, which I'm guessing is tied to legislation. 4 of those students are unaccompanied, meaning that they are navigating the world without a direct tie to a support guardian. So in that swirl of learning needs and attendance challenges and circumstances that make engagement difficult, we are continuing to try to find ways to improve engagement. And one of the new interventions that we are using this year is called Securely Pass. Securely Pass is an electronic pass system that allows us to track the movement of students throughout the building. And so in real time, what that means is that if Connor has to go to the bathroom, in the design as it exists in our building, he would ask his teacher if he can go to the bathroom. The teacher enters the security pass. It says he's gone to the bathroom. He goes to the bathroom. That is specifically identified, so that a student who is signed out to the second floor science wing bathroom doesn't end up in the single stall bathroom across from the nurse's office. And then when he returns to class, the pass is ended. So we know that Connor's gone to the bathroom and we know how long he was out of the room. And our hope is that this will help us understand patterns of disengagement that into which we can intervene. But because it's new, it's a work in progress in terms of what we are making of this information. So in our data dive into the realities of Securely Pass, here are some of the statistics that we have pulled. We have 3 students in the building who have taken more than 250 passes in the first semester, which I'm not sure exactly how many days we're in attendance, but you know, it's pretty strong pass usage by those 3. 10 students who have used it for used more than 200 passes in the semester. One of the features of Securely Pass is that when we figure out that a student has an inordinate number of passes that defy reasonable explanation, we can say, Mr. Eckert, we are going to limit you to 4 passes a day to try to keep you more engaged in class. So when Mr. Eckert reaches that 4 pass threshold, he can no longer take passes out, and hopefully shift his focus away from whatever's happening in the bathroom to what's happening in the classroom. It also allows us to identify students who are meeting up in places in the building and limit their ability to be in the hallway simultaneously. So currently there are 11 pairs of students who are blocked from being out at the same time. The bottom 2 are pieces of information that give us something to talk about, but in a frame that is not yet part of our consistent reflection. You know, what are we to make of the fact that the average pass to the first floor bathroom, which that is the bathroom down, excuse me, not across from the cafeteria, but down in the classrooms on the other end of the building. What do we make of the fact that passes to those bathrooms last on average 9.5 minutes, but passes to the second floor bathrooms last 7.5 minutes? Especially when the expectation for bathroom use is really more in the range of 3 to 5 minutes. You know, that gives us something to talk about, but we haven't gotten to the point of having a faculty-wide discussion about it yet.
Can I ask a question about how this works? I mean, back in our day, you got a paper hall pass, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do they need their phones to have this pass?
No.
So how, what do they have? Nothing.
They don't have anything physically in their possession. It's an exchange between the teacher and the person releasing them that is electronically recorded in a way that anyone in the building can see.
So like if another teacher who didn't issue the pass or request the pass sees him in the hallway and says, you have a pass, how do they answer that question?
They would have to say, so-and-so signed me out. So they don't have anything to show, but something that we will do is we see a student out, if they say they have a pass, we can just quick look and see that, you know, whether that student has a pass or not. And it's typically something that that we are able to address after the fact rather than in the moment.
Passes in the cloud, basically.
But there's no way for someone else who didn't request or issue the pass to confirm that they have a pass.
Without looking at a device. Right.
Can I ask a follow-up question, comment to that? With the 9.5 and the 7.5, that's totally reliant on the teacher.
Correct.
How, I mean, there's a million things going on in the classroom. How confident are we that it's probably more real time on the out, maybe not so real time on the in, on the comeback?
So, we're working, so in my training this past summer was Securely Pass, because even though I'm not the best with technology, I was one that helped set everybody up. So that was fun. I learned. But the teacher can go back in later and fix it, and a lot of teachers do. They'll recognize that they forgot to end a pass or that they ended it like way later, and you can go in and change the time, and you also can put a comment. Or, they said very commonly, like the first year, sometimes even 2 years is a growing year for the staff and the students in using the model. So much like what you're talking about too, Mark, like, how do we as a school, become, this is a part of what we do, and also helping teachers to develop their classroom management as far as like, when is it okay to ask me for a pass, so that maybe we don't really want and suggest that teachers stop teaching to tell Sam Ronco to go to the bathroom and approve Sam Ronco to go to the bathroom. So how do you create a dynamic in your classroom that supports the engagement and the education that's going on in the room, as well as allowing students to leave the room when they need to? And so it's a work in progress this year. Certain teachers have like really grasped hold of it and have really figured out a system and they feel really confident. Others are still trying to figure their way through. And certainly some kids have figured out the loopholes and like, oh yeah, Ronco, I got it. And then I look later, I'm like, yeah, and I follow up. Others have been like, yeah, very truthful, and you can look and sure enough, they were where they were supposed to be. So very much our school as a community is learning and growing with Securely Pass, but it has greatly helped. Especially helping us to limit certain kids or spend way too much time out, or to help make it so certain students aren't in the halls together when they really shouldn't be. And so we've already seen a lot of progress, and the hallways are a lot quieter, but we got some room to grow for sure. So I don't know if that answers your question. Yes.
Enough, yeah, it does.
Okay.
No, it confirms my suspicion
Yeah.
that it's really dependent upon the
Yes.
teacher logging in and logging
Yes.
out, and that's not always perfect.
Not always.
As evidenced by the fact that you said they have the ability to go back
And fix it, yep.
and fix it.
Yep.
But I also wonder though, is if you're going back to fix it, are you really remembering the exact time they came back in?
Yeah, it's when I say go back to fix, it's like right away. It's not like hours later. It's like when they, sit down and they fix it. So teachers have been saying that's been working for them. If they're in the middle of a conversation, they can go fix it right away after.
Who came up with the 3.5 minutes as the appropriate time for the math?
Oh, just that 3 to 5, and that to me is observational during teacher observations, right? So if I'm doing a teacher observation, I'll mark when a student leaves and then mark when they come back as part of our observation system. The idea that and it's not something that we, work to control outside of the students who are 15 minutes, 20 minutes. But in terms of what I have observed in that, like 5 minutes, we have that.
We don't have a standard in place telling students they have to use the bathroom.
No. But a student being out of the room for 10 minutes adds up over time, right? A student taking one bathroom break of that duration in each class is 40 minutes of the school day out of the classroom. And that really is more how we are using this information. We're not, the students who are, right, so that's why I put the N sizes on that. So, 3,600 passes versus 7,000. I'm sorry, 1,600. So 3,600, 1,600, kind of a broad reach. Like there are passes in there where the student went to the bathroom, came back, teacher didn't record when they were back. And so the pass timed out at 30 minutes. But it really has been a tool for discussion in behavior meetings, in IEP meetings, looking at a student who's struggling in a series of classes, who is present and attentive is very different than working with a student whose average time out of the classroom on any given day is 67 minutes. So it's really been more useful in those contexts.
Meredith, do you know how much this costs us?
I think it was 6,000.
No, I think it was 1,200.
Oh, that's the kiosk.
Yeah, the kiosk was 600.
Yeah. And now it's a startup fee, and then it's like a certain amount per student, which isn't as expensive as the startup fee.
Anecdotally, the hallways are a totally different reality this year than they were last year. Just that observed experience of being in the hall during class time and seeing how many students are walking past you. It's had an impact.
Does this strike anybody else as like an opticon a little bit?
Yeah, very dystopian. Although I understand the motivation.
I'm confused the entire thing, like, it's kind of sketching me out, to be perfectly.
I mean, it's computerized, but on the other hand, like you say, we had paper passes back in the day. And there are kids who are abusing the system, who it's in their interest.
Education is not a big.
I mean, we're not microchipping kids.
No.
I mean, yeah, I get, what did you do? Yeah.
Not asking you
I almost wish I
personally,
didn't know
but is
that.
there a student reaction that you've observed to this?
You can be honest, you're on the
Yes,
board.
you can be honest, there's always that.
This is the tree of trust.
I've been personally fine with it.
I'm just fine with it because I'm not the problem. At least I hope I'm not. But I would say that the general opinion that I've encountered has been leaning towards the more negative.
I will say though, I also noticed a distinct difference, especially in like when I walk into the bathroom, there's a much smaller chance that there's gonna be 8 kids meeting in there than there would have been a few years ago. So I think that there is a real impact, and it's not really a big inconvenience at all.
I mean, in the paper pass system, there would also be sign out sheets, right, where you would say what time you're leaving, when you came back and where you were. It just wasn't centralized.
Is that what you did before, like last year or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's similar. Yeah, I guess to me, I mean, high school where it was just trust, you know, there weren't all classes or anything. I mean, it just feels, I don't know, it feels like not trust based, but like stick more than carrot kind of way of doing things, but I suppose. You know, see how to do that.
Well, I mean, there's no real stick.
Yeah, but it feels like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a.
But what it comes down to is it depends a lot on the implementation and the usage of this data, right? And if you trust the people to use the data in a constructive fashion, like having conversations during your failing this class and you're checking out for 10 minutes a day in this class, do you see a connection between those two things? That feels to me constructive. If you're at 4.3 minutes per bathroom break, you gotta get on the ball here, right? That's a whole different kind of conversation. Or if you know you went to the bathroom 60 times and your classmate only went 52, right? There are a lot of variations of this, right? It's rife for abuse. But,
Yeah.
but on both sides, right? Without it, it's rife for abuse too, and that has been abused by students to not have any accountability about the amount of time you,
Yeah.
like Connor said, right? This is not the kid who goes to the bathroom. This is the kid who's texting somebody and saying, let's meet up in the
Right,
bathroom.
I mean,
for
that's
5
the
minutes."
reality, it was the meetups, it was
Yeah.
the bathroom congregations, it was, you know, stuff happening in the bathrooms that we wanted to try to prevent that make other students feel unsafe, they're all, you know,
Yeah.
all kinds of things that in addition to engagement that really
I
we're
guess
trying to work on.
what I'm expressing is that I hate this. And
Yeah.
but it's demonstrating the need for it. Like, I understand, like, seeing what you're describing about the extent of the problem, like, I know, it sounds like, you like, do it. It's like, it's, right, I hate that we have to do it, but I can't.
The only problem that like I personally experience with it is like if I leave in the middle of the teacher talking and then I come back and then they forget to end my pass and I've been in the bathroom for like 20 minutes, but then like they forget to change it afterwards, so I just have been in the bathroom 20 minutes and I swear I haven't. But yeah, that's really the only problem that I really like.
But has there been any like outcome of that for you?
No,
But is there an element of like, you feel like they don't trust you, like, that's the part where it's like, or you feel like, oh no, I'm in trouble, or like, oh, and there's anxiety around that, like, that's the part.
I feel like I have a biased opinion because I feel like I haven't, like I feel like we're the wrong set of people to be at.
You're above suspicion.
At a school meeting on a Tuesday night, like.
I mean, to be fair, there are lots of things we do that
Yeah.
like send the message probably we don't trust people, like,
Yeah.
yeah, they're pretty locked down browsers on our computers
Yeah.
and strong firewall protection and, you know, lots of things, but you know, I think some of that is about safety and some of that is about helping kids see the boundary line and know that there's one there and helping them to self-regulate against it. And I think some of the data from several slides back about, you know, showing the number of kids that we have who are struggling with either behavior or engagement or attention. You know, we had lots of kids taking breaks, wandering the hallway multiple times, taking advantage of that in some ways. And so I think that this was a way to kind of get a handle on some of those things that
Well,
were
I think,
happening.
I think an important piece of context is the conversation we had 2-3 years ago when we got the DEI audit back. Right, we were shocked at the percentage of students who expressed not feeling safe all the time in the schools.
In the hallways.
And how often the hallways and the bathrooms were in
Yep.
particular at the high school and middle school. ACE had a different story, but the hallways in the bathroom were where people were saying they weren't feeling safe because it was a completely unregulated space. And the people who were there had a self-filtered, it was a self-filtered bias of who was in those places. And, so to me, that's a piece of context we can't just drop. That was the conversation we were having 2 or 3 years ago first.
I think one thing that I appreciate from it is that it's kind of like establishing like an equity when it comes to like just like the passes, because I don't think I've ever before this system been asked for a pass like in the hall. I mean, like, I know that no one expected that I was doing something bad, but like I've never been asked for a pass in the hall, none of my friends have. But I feel like because now everyone had to sign out consistently, like I think that increased the equity there, which I appreciate. And also like just overall, like the reaction that I've been seeing is just like, I mean, some kids are annoyed that like, they have to wait to get a pass and whatever, but like they understand that like they're not the problem. Like they know that like, I mean, it's something that you have to do because there's other kids that are the problem, but like I feel trusted enough like that people think that I'm not doing something bad. It's just like I'm doing it because it's something that's like everyone's doing, you know?
So wait, so if somebody asks for a pass, the system will be like, no pass available right now, is that?
Well, it's just you have to wait for like the teacher to approve it, and like a lot of teachers just don't let multiple kids out at the same time.
Do the students have the ability to see their data?
I don't know what the student view of it is like. I mean, if they wanted to see it, they could come to us and ask for it. for
No, I
sure.
meant not.
But I'm not sure what the student
I don't
interface
think
is like.
I can pull it up.
So,
I don't think.
Was the institution of this system ever transmitted to parents? Is this ever?
Yeah. It went out it's in our student handbook. And like a little blurb about it, I believe, I'm
Which
sure,
nobody
I'm
reads.
sure. And then,
But they all
I remember
signed these
talking about-
papers saying
They
they
just sign that paper at the end, they don't.
yeah, exactly,
So,
but that's
my,
true.
my
And then we
guess
can
is
preview.
the overwhelming majority of parents have no clue about this. And I'm on the school board, and I've got 3 kids in high school, and I had no clue about this. None.
It was in the week in preview.
Yeah, it was in the weekend preview, I know that,
I
and I
should read
believe
that.
there's a blurb in the student handbook. But you're not wrong, people don't read those, I get that, but we talked about them at, like our opening days and at open house, we had some parents that would ask about it, we showed, but again, that's who attended that night, but yeah.
we don't have any view. of
that
data.
would be it.
You have some portal that you,
Yeah, like we log into a portal to be able to make a pass.
so you create the pass.
Yeah, we create a pass, request it from the teacher to a location, and then the teacher just goes in on their laptop and approves it. Or the teacher can also make us the pass, but
So you can.
we can't make one fully on our, they need to approve it and end it.
And there can be appointment passes to like meet with guidance, they can make an appointment pass per meeting. Things like that.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, it sounds like the thing we should do in some supported, I guess, I think as long, I feel like for me, it's as long as it stays in a sort of. The feeling of the students in more constructive space that they understand and it doesn't feel like punitive or feel, you know what I mean?
I mean, we haven't had, I don't think we've had any punitive conversations about securely
Or like
pass.
anxiety or whatever, like, yeah.
I mean, it really is just about, I mean, on the one hand, addressing institutionally, having a lot of traffic in the halls in a way that folks in the halls are not learning. How do we get them back into class? And this being a system that was used at Herman and Old Town. And that was the conversation that kind of got it started. But then also those, specific conversations with students. I learned looking at the data that Sam pulled that, we have some kids who have 40 hours of pass usage so far this year. That's an opening, for a dialogue about, what's happening. First of all, how is this student doing? Right? If they're doing well and everything is going well and their reports are fantastic, then those are probably passes to other teachers with whom they're working, which makes perfect sense. And so it, isn't something to add to the conversation necessarily. But for a student who is, I was in an IEP meeting a few weeks ago about a student who was significantly absent and still had 20+ hours of pass usage in the last month. how much learning can be happening for that student, right? That was an entry point that, we couldn't have had if it weren't for the existence of this data. So at least for us, it's really only being used to, one, shift the culture of the building in a way that students are more in class more, and then secondarily to support individual students with conversations about their individual choices.
And for my lane to really help try to ensure that it's the best of our ability that safety is occurring and that we're trying to keep those bathrooms safe for kids to go to the bathroom. Because really the time that the bathrooms become congested is those break times. Like those 5 minutes between the blocks, like that's when I try to go from bathroom to bathroom to bathroom, to get kids out of there so that they're using it, not just hanging out. But we're like other times the bathrooms are more open for use for the purpose that they serve. And it feels safer. And a lot of students have told me that they feel safer in those moments, which is good.
So it sounds like, and I like the framing, Meredith, about opening a dialogue. It sounds like occasional blips wouldn't take notice if somebody's having a rough day digestively or they're menstruating.
No.
Well, I guess the worry, right, is like, people have bad weeks and
Yes.
they're out a lot, but you're looking for chronic. I guess the other comment I'd make too is that the difference between the 9.7 and 7.5 doesn't seem significant to me yet without knowing more, like the standard deviations of the populations or something. So those might not be different.
You can't really rely on that data at all, because we've already determined that teachers don't record often when they come in, and sometimes they go back and fix after, but do they remember, do they even
Or
fix
if
it?
it's skewed.
But its significance to us is maybe we need to stop by that first floor bathroom more often. Right, so not necessarily breaking it down student by student and trying to come to meaningful conclusions, but instead use it as a compass bearing of some kind in a way that could potentially improve engagement by keeping kids where they're supposed to be.
But it may not be to that,
More
right?
usage of the first floor bathroom, so therefore there's likely more kids in there at one given time, so they're gonna have more conversation.
But
That
That's part of
could be.
that being that's comments.
also just as simply, the second floor is smaller, so the distance to the bathroom is shorter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I would just say more broadly, like, and I know you're looking at this other one, but so this is the, like, when I say punitive, right, it's sort of like the, keeping them in the classroom, right, like holding the door shut or something like that. But there's like the other end, right, which are like engagement, which is like making them want to be like drawing.
Keeping them, and when I say keeping them in the classroom, I mean keeping them learning, keeping them engaged.
Sure, but like, well, it's being present, right, in some sense, and because of there's some outside structure that, but like, yeah, so then drawing, like I find like in my classroom, like, it's like there's the whole cultural, like engaging them in a way that makes.
What Noah's saying is that being in the room is not the same as being in the room.
Yes, that's part of what I'm saying. And if they are engaged, then they may be drawn into the room from the inside, and you won't need to.
Maybe they don't need to pass them because they're engaged.
Yeah, because they weren't gonna be going to the bathroom, but they're
Or
already.
they're not engaged, so they're bored, so they want.
Right, so there's.
Well,
Which is a great segue to our next slide.
Yeah, I suspect that's coming, so let's let them move on.
Like to hear.
So where do we see evidence of engagement? Well, as you know, this year we have implemented ELOs or extended learning opportunities for the first time. We just ran our first semester. We had 12 students participate for an accumulated 450 hours of time engaged in learning outside of the classroom. This was supported by, for some students, in-class time with our JMG instructor that included online modules that were customized for what it is they were doing their ELO in. For other students, it was run as an independent study where they didn't have a designated contact time with the teacher during the day, but instead connected at other times. Those students worked in a range of industries, some of which involved coordination and connection making in order to find opportunities. For others, they knew what they wanted to do. They knew where they wanted to work. This semester, our enrollment in ELOs has grown to 15. And we have some students who are continuing from the first semester, but we also have new students who are interested in new industries that were not engaged with last semester. So at this point, this is really just kind of an update of something that we tried that offered another pathway, another kind of engagement opportunity. For our first semester pilot went really well. We're looking forward to seeing what comes the second semester. So for the 2024 administration, Orono High School earned the bronze recognition on AP Honor Roll, and I'll explain a little bit more about what that means in coming slides. This spring, we had 72 students earn scores of 3 or better on their AP exams for a 90% achievement level across 143 tests. This was our highest percentage. As you can see on the graph on the left, that reflects the percentage of students who earn qualifying scores. That's how the College Board measures it. That's our performance level for the last 5 years. And then the slide on the right shows participation. So the green are the number of students who are taking AP exams, and the purple is the number of exams that those students are taking. So we have 173 exams ordered for this spring, which is our highest number for at least the past 3 years. And we have 99 students taking those exams, which you can see from the 22-23 school year. That's the same number of students taking exams, but because of our school population now versus then, it's actually a much higher percentage of students taking AP exams. So highlights from the 2024 administration was that we had 11 courses that exceeded the state average on scores. This is a list of those courses. The AP scores on a 5-point scale. So these are the levels above the state average that were reflected for each of those. A highlight being stats, 1.14 above the state average on that was pretty fantastic. AP Scholars is a recognition that that the College Board awards to students. We had 12 students earn AP Scholar recognition, 10 students earn AP Scholars with honors, and 11 students earn AP Scholar with distinction. And that I'm blanking on the exact criteria for each of those levels, but it's a combination of the number of tests taken and the number of qualifying scores earned. So this is the criteria for the AP Honor Roll. And I recognize it's hard to read from a distance, but essentially the College Board determines the awarding of AP Honor Roll annually for the graduating class of students. They look at the percent of students in the class who took an AP exam at any point in their time in high school, the percent of students who earned, excuse me, a qualifying score of 3 or above, and then the last category, college optimization, is the percentage of students who took at least 5 exams, with at least one of those exams being in 9th or 10th grade, right? So the longevity of success in AP. So for our class of 2024, we had 105 students enrolled, and 45% of students took at least one AP exam. 29% of students, or 30 students, earned at least one qualifying score, and 10% of our students in that year earned or took at least 5 exams with at least one in 9th or 10th grade. So this was our highest achievement level. We earned gold on that category.
Before you leave AD, can I just stop and say congratulations? We've traditionally had high participation and low scores. And you kind of always heard, well, those two things are coupled together, but you're kind of proving that those two things are not coupled together. We're having high participation and we're significantly improving scores. And, you know, I have some ideas of some of the things that went into that, in terms of teachers who went to academies, and you're suggesting teachers who go to academies, and a number of other things. So I just like to pause and recognize that that's a significant accomplishment.
Thank you. it's fantastic to see, and it is, I think an element of professional engagement in that as well. Right, like we have, teachers who have either expressed interest in or begun participating in AP scoring. So folks who were sitting down with, alongside colleagues over the course of 8 days and really digging into students' tests from across the world and developing with training and understanding of what the different scores mean, and then, putting the hours in to, score, test after test after test. And that is something that, I think, teachers' willingness to step into that space and invest in their work with students in that way is something else that is also being reflected. So early college, taking stock of the role that early college is playing for us. Currently, we have for this year 88 students who either have earned or in the process of earning college credit, and accumulated, this will amount to 670 college credits across OHS.
It's like a quarter of students.
Is that 88 just at ULane, or does that also include UTC and EMCC credits?
That's gonna be on the next slide. Is it not?
I keep having problems when I try to go back.
Oh,
It pauses. I had to go all the way out last time.
maybe the live,
Oh, wait.
it wasn't the slide.
Okay.
Okay.
Found it.
So this is our distribution of credits, to answer Connor's question. So 3 ways that students are earning college credit here at Orono High School. One is through their work at UTC, because UTC has, as part of its programming, a significant amount of dual enrollment credit that students earn while they're there. Much of that is a part of the traditional program, but we actually have 2 students this year who are going to be graduating Orono High School and Eastern Maine Community College with their associate's degrees through an especially intentional pursuit of those early college credits that they need in order to earn that associate's. So you can see here, those courses run on the half year. We had 153 credits earned in semester 1 and 120 on track for semester 2 through UTC. The middle column are the students who are taking early college class at one of the UMaine campuses, not connected to their work at UTC or their work through dual enrollment. So those are students who are taking in-person classes at UMaine, virtual classes, University of Maine of Augusta classes. Those are in the middle category, so 107 credits for the fall and 134 on track for the spring. And then the bottom column is a column that didn't exist 3 years ago. These are dual enrollment classes, so classes taught here on site at Orono High School by Orono High School teachers, but in connection with a community college or a university that is awarding them credit for that class. So 153 credits on track for the end of this year, because these are all full year classes. College algebra, technical math, and English comp in the English department. So this win-win is our intervention / enrichment block. It's 30 minutes in the middle of the day, Tuesday through Friday. Actually, when we started the year with the number of activities that we had designated as living in advisory time, we actually started the year with only 3 days of win-win a week and 2 days of advisory. But we have gotten back to 4 days of win-win each week. This is a system where a student who needs to see a teacher to make something up, a student who's working on a project that goes outside of class time, these are requests that the student can make to the teacher or vice versa, that pulls the student into that teacher's room during this time when all teachers and all students are available. So this graph illustrates the line at the bottom are the average daily requests. So about how many requests are being made each day. We're hovering right around 130. So 130 requests, 130 students on average each day are requested by a teacher for win-win. But the top half of the graph reflects the number of hours of intervention time that translates to. So the dip there in December is in part because of the fact that we had a handful of late start days where win-win isn't in the schedule on a day when we have a weather event. We also had vacation weeks, and it was also still in the time when we were doing 3 days of win-win per week versus 4. So, you know, that helping us understand the impact of losing win-win time when it's something that we surrender to something else. So that's the evidence of engagement that we can see. But when we have students in the room, when we have students in the building, what are some of the obstacles to having them engaged that we're able to measure? So this is an illustration of our suspensions. This data goes back to 1920 because that's the first time I made this presentation. That was the start of my data dive. I did not pull this data for last year, so the 23-24 school year isn't on here. But this shows you some of the trends in student behaviors, and I'll let Sam take it from here for this slide.
So these are suspensions. So when I'm working with students and like considering a situation and a behavior choice that they made, there's different factors that come into play, like whether the student has an IEP 504, what the behavior is, how many times we've tried to address the behavior, how many times we've tried to assist the behavior, what consequences have been given prior, awareness of their situation in some cases, that outside of school, and what their behaviors and what the impact would be from an in-school suspension versus an out-of-school suspension. So many of the behaviors that we deal with, you know, oftentimes start with a lunch detention, such as like a disrespectful action in the classroom, whereas others just go automatically to a suspension such as substance abuse, fighting. Obviously, if there was some sort of more higher level, it would probably go even more than that. The in-school suspension was added last year, so that's something that is we've been working with and trying to work on getting kids in that space, so it's not to be seen that they get a free day off. Because some of our more at-risk kids, that's how they look at it. They look like, oh great, yeah, sure, Ron, go send me home. I'll go play video games. So that's been a nice big tool in the last couple of years, and I've seen it take hold more in conversations with kids this year than even last year, but it is only on a every other day, white day rotation because of staffing of that space. So most here, you know, you get your total suspensions, but then we also got the use and possession, which is either marijuana, nicotine, and or there's been a few cases this year of alcohol. And then fighting is to the level of, you know, obviously a fist fight or throwing things or something within the classroom or the hallway settings. Disrespect, those are, again, oftentimes it's not that, like, if a kid is disrespectful in a classroom, it's an automatic suspension. We want them here at school, we want them in the classroom, try to work with them. But if the behavior continues and grows over time, it can lead to an in-school or out-of-school suspension. And then here, there's the difference between the ISS, just how many times we try to use our ISS system to keep kids in school, where they can interface with the teachers, can get help, rather than sending them home to possibly a video game.
Is the top line, is that out of school suspensions or out of school and in school together?
Just out of school.
Out of school, okay.
The one on the blue,
Yeah, the top.
Yeah, so
that's supposed to be out.
yeah, so that is 47.
Yeah.
So we've had 47 incidents of out of school suspension this year and 37 incidents of in-school suspension this year.
So I mean, there's a clear trend there, right, barring the COVID year when they weren't in the building. Obviously, one explanation is better detection or tracking, but is there a sense that there's a real kind of actual behavioral changes?
Yeah, particularly the last couple of years, there's a lot of students that just really struggle to be able to maintain and have appropriate behaviors. You know, there's a lot more swearing, there's a lot more disrespect. Unfortunately, substance use has had an uptick, and I'm working with the Acadia contracted people over vacation because I've had no luck with emails and phone calls. I'm gonna drive around to some local agencies and be like, hello, my name is Sam. I'm also working a lot with Officer Patterson. He and I have figured out some things that we're gonna give, like, we can't maybe have the resources come to the school, but we can say to a student, hey, Sam, I've noticed you're having this issue, you should try reaching out, and I can work with a parent. Most of those kids too, if they're in counseling already, I try to get permission to reach out to the counselor and say like, hey, I've noticed that they're coping with what's going on with them with substances. The thing I'm proud of, and I know this may seem a little odd, but some of these consequences is because the kids trust us. They come to us, like, even during a consequence, or they'll say, you know, like, I gotta talk to you about so-and-so. So while I still have to hold them accountable at times, sometimes, you know, I can help them. Like, why is it that you, when you get upset, you go right to, you know, getting that angry? Or why is it you're swearing all the time? Or, so we can, like, there are honest, you know, real restorative conversations happening with these consequences as well. So it takes a bit. And then I also, as probably many of you know, I don't like to work solely, so I always have a team involved. So like that, try to get the parents involved, I try to get like a 504 IEP, whomever involved, the teacher, if that person was involved, and really try to, you know, build a team around the student of support to try to limit. But yeah, there's an uptick of certain behaviors that is affecting our students' success here. For sure.
We're not anomalous.
No, I certainly don't think it's a school issue or anything, yeah, it's concerning. And,
Yeah.
especially, you know, I mean, disrespect is serious, I mean, that represents, but like the use possession, it's a really tangible thing, right?
Yeah.
Anytime somebody's caught with that stuff, it's always reported, it's always treated, and those numbers are rising. That's really concerning for our students.
And I will say one thing that I know, I mean, I feel very thankful for is Officer Patterson. We work really strongly together to really try to recognize when kids need our support more than maybe a tough conversation. So today, he and I had to interface with a student we've interfaced with before, and it was a different Officer Patterson than 3 times ago. And that had a different response from the kid and the parent when I called the parent than it did previously. So I do feel like he and I work really hard together to try to notice that kids make mistakes, and they're doing what they can oftentimes in their environments, but then how to hold them accountable and hopefully change that behavior and give them the resources. So he's huge. Like, I really appreciate him very much.
More about suspensions on the next slide, I think.
You want me, oh, so this just demonstrates that, even though those numbers are high, as I was kind of getting to with how I say I start at lower, trying to, you know, help and change the behavior, and then it gets up to like suspensions. This demonstrates, that there are some students that are frequent flyers in my office, and, that unfortunately we continue to give consequences as well as supports, and we're still struggling to see the changes, I guess. But I will say for a lot of these kids, even the higher flyer ones, we are seeing changes. It's just possibly slow. So the number of students who have been suspended, is 36, but the one who has been suspended at least twice is 19, whereas I do have 5 that are 5 or more. So those numbers, you know, it's not just one time, like one kid for each suspension you saw on the previous slide. This demonstrates that there are students that are really struggling and that we're working to support.
Cell phones. This to me feels like the tip of a much bigger iceberg, in that the role of time that kids and adults, frankly, spend looking at a screen rather than doing all of the other things that they would be doing if they weren't looking on that screen is having a ripple effect impact across our school in a way that is confounding everything else. Right, the students whose behave like disrespect. I feel like we could probably do a deep dive into the role that disconnection plays in students' disrespect, and then the inexperience, frankly, that some of our kids have with communicating in real time and looking at the impact of their words on somebody else. Something that wasn't on that suspension graph that is in the specifics of Sam's behavior data are the number of students who are using technology to harass each other. the way in which phones undermine our ability to be present, the role they have in, pulling kids together in bathrooms because they can communicate, where they're gonna be and when. The deficits in sustained attention that students have. I feel like this continues to be a primary issue for us that we obviously can't change the reality of during students' time outside the building, but I feel like it's imperative that we address the reality inside the building. We have the same cell phone policy that we've had for years. It's a struggle of implementation that continues. This graph represents, students who have surrendered their phones to the office for not having surrendered it to their teacher when they're supposed to. The duration of those surrenders in the office, which for some students does turn into, you cannot have your phone in school for the rest of the semester because of the choices that you're making when you do have it. But I'm really looking forward to Lynn Lyons's conversations with our community, with parents, students, and with teachers to hopefully jumpstart our ability to talk with one another about the impact that this has and what we should be doing about it, because it continues to be an issue that is getting in the way of the kind of learning that our students would otherwise be doing, both academically and emotionally, socially.
And just to remind me, the policy is students can use them in passing times and lunches, but not during class.
When a student arrives in class, the teacher is supposed to have a designated place or container where all phones go. Students are supposed to put their phone in that place for the duration of class and then get it back only once class is ended.
And then, yes, they have them during lunch and during the breaks.
That concludes the information that we have to share with you this evening.
Any other questions, comments?
Questions, comments, I guess, we talked about this before, but like, sort of stepping back, like, and looking, I know you're thinking about lots of other things too, and so this is a piece of it, but like, there's focus on the sort of high achievers and like getting test scores so they can go on to college or like place out of things and like, which, maybe are meaningful, maybe aren't, whatever, but teaching the test, whatever, there's these high end focus for certain achievers, and there's this focus on the problem, like students, whatever, the disruptive and falling off the other end, right? And like, how do we keep them here? And like, what are the sorts of tools or things that are happening at that end? And like, in my mind, I'm sort of wondering, like, okay, what about most, like, what about the middle? And like, where I'm like, talking about before, like, where I'm interested is like active learning engagement, in ways that like make the center of the class more inviting and exciting and accessible, and like the discussion and creating a central community from the middle that then draws everyone up and in and raises everyone like with that of like having that active space. It's not like focused down here trying to sweep people off the floor, but like, so I guess.
Well, I think there are a number of places where the students you're talking about are reflected in here. Cell phones are ubiquitous, right? It impacts everyone. Our early college data is not about high-flying kids. That is about every student in this building has the opportunity to access early college in a way that is appropriate for them. Students taking college dual enrollment through UTC, students taking the dual enrollment classes here. We have students from across the achievement spectrum taking early college classes out of interest and getting a chance to dip their toes while having the support of high school. ELOs are also being accessed by students across that realm. But I think in terms of the challenge in reporting out in this context on what I feel like is the question that you're asking is that there's no data that we have on it. And that idea of capturing the engagement and the kind of learning that is making a kid not want to go to the bathroom is a difficult thing to do. But that doesn't mean that we're not talking about it. You know, we had this fantastic professional development day in January that was all about the question of what does engagement mean? What do we mean when we talk about it? And how do we leverage an appreciation for it in service to the learning students experience each day? And so that conversation is happening. And I will continue to pursue ways, Noah, to track it in a way that I can share with you quantitatively.
That's where you need the chips in the brain, right? And then you can actually get the report of how much endorphins are running at any moment in time.
Any other questions, thoughts, feedback?
Yeah, I'd just say thank you. This was clearly thoughtful. I mean, you pitched it with a theme, but that's clearly a deeply thought out theme and something, like you say, I know the conversation's happening in ways that show up in the data-driven approaches you can present here. And I know it's been showing up in staff meeting conversations and professional development that in ways that don't show up here. But yeah, I just see a lot of collecting of data, identification of problems, addressing their problems, which is, you know, that kind of iterative management process, which sometimes is hard to bring to education because you're just trying to keep the building from not falling down on a given day. And so I appreciate that that's happening.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. Before we dive into the next topic, can we pause for a yearbook photo before our students leave? I'm worried that the students might leave before this because the yearbook advisors have been eager.
Yeah, we don't want you to get in
We
trouble with your
cannot
book.
leave this meeting without having a photo for them. And I want Dorsey and Connor to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last year, we did it right in front of the bookshelf. Do it again. Thank you. Didn't know you were gonna have a yearbook photo tonight. All right, I guess you were in it last year,
I wasn't.
but you didn't know that was tonight.
No.
Okay, a little closer. Wait, no, this way, actually. Yeah. And maybe Connor, you at the end, so it's symmetrical.
Okay,
Okay. They're probably not gonna like that it's so long, but we'll give it a shot. Okay. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Okay. That'll do, don't you think?
You're very trusting, Dory, just one photo.
Like 5.
Oh, okay.
Technology.
Okay, thank you. We'll get to it too. So the enrollment.
Enrollment class
Okay.
size.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's the time of year when we typically take another look. We've started second semester for the middle and high school, which means there's some, in particular, well, at all buildings, at both of those buildings, there's some shuffling of classes at times, more at the high school than the middle. But also just to look at where we are with enrollment, because there is a lot of coming and going that happens. So you can see here that, overall as a district, we're a little up from where we were in October. I took things out. We have some out of district placements that I've noted that I just, they're not in our class, size data. So I just have them out to the side. So at ASA, the number for apples to apples would be, we're at 333, considering our out of district placements compared to October. At OMS, when we add our out of district placement, we'd be at 159. So they're up by 6. And at the high school, we would be at 340, so up by 8. And you can see, as is typically the case, it's not an evenly distributed across grades. Some grades are up, some grades are down, and some grades are right where they were in October. I think the data at the bottom is what's really brand new. It's using the high school second semester classes, which there's a lot of changing at the semester at the high school. So these reflect the second semester numbers. And so when I compared this though to what the fall looked like, world language was also the lowest number in the fall. Technology has dropped some since fall. But those those two were on the lower end of the scale for average sizes. Everything else is, in the neighborhood of probably, not too far off from where it was in the fall. And I would say our, over on the right, the average class size in terms of the number of sections that are in those ranges. We have more classes this semester in that 10 to 19 range and fewer in all the others. So there's kind of a little bit of a migration from like five less classes in that 0 to 10 and 7 less classes in the 20 to 29 and 30 plus kind of combined. So have more in that 10 to 19 range, which is actually more of our typical class size across most classrooms. This is something that's also just a piece of the puzzle as we begin to work on budget. But the thing that we will be adding to this, and Lynn has some work to do with the high school on doing some estimating of our expected tuition population at the high school next year. So you'll hear more about that probably the late February meeting and then recurring, because that's a moving, we get more and more information as we go through the budget process with respect to tuition students and their commitments to us. So one thing that was interesting that Meredith told me that's not reflected here is, I'm gonna rely on you to remember the number, but we have 8 more tuition students with us in 9th grade than we projected. 12, okay, 12 more than we projected last year when we were, projecting our numbers. So that's positive for sure. We go based on the best information we have at the time, but often it changes. And so that's just something we put in the kind of the stats for how we figure up what percentage of the base to estimate. So when we had our enrollment study, the statisticians who did that used kind of our representative sample that they had at that time. And since that time, we've been able to collect more data to say, since that time, we've seen this kind of attendance rate from our tuition town. So that's what we will be working on over the next month or so. Do you have any questions or comments about this? I know it's a lot of information. I would say, unfortunately, the growing of our numbers doesn't help us for subsidy, because October is all they use. They used to use an average of October and April with subsidy, so it's just October that counts. So sometimes you win and sometimes you lose that. So we'll have to wait till next October to capture, increased population again.
Not suggesting any particular trajectory or any particular cause, but you compare our numbers with like the state EPS formulas or the state averages. And ACE in the middle school are pretty close and the high school is noticeably below. So, and that's a function of many things, including the fact that we pride ourselves on having diverse offerings in the high school. And, so I'm not saying that's a problem, but it does kind of jump out that compared to whatever your benchmark is, whether it is the one that's a little bit different. Our average class size versus say the state average class size of the EPS general size. 13, right? It's smaller than ACE and it's smaller than the middle school. And it's not uncommon that high schools have smaller class sizes because they do try and have these diverse offerings, but we're just a little more smaller than state averages, but it's probably
It's 16 to 1.
What's that?
The staff ratio for high school 16 to 1.
16 to 1?
Yeah.
And there are certainly, I've said this before and some people might disagree with this, but in my opinion, there are certainly such things as too small for class, right? I think when you go under ten, if you're talking about a grad seminar, that's a different story, but I think when you go under ten, I think you're on some real challenges, that can present themselves, depending on that mix of ten, of course, it always depends on the mix of kids, but a class of 6, 7, or 8 can be just as challenging as a class of 27. So,
It can.
the fact that we've got 32 classes under 10, to me is something you need to look at.
And some of those are single section classes and some are not. And I think that's another factor to consider when you have classes that small. And what, if it's not a single section class, what's causing that low number?
If we've got two sections of a class that are both under 10, then that's a real problem.
I'm not saying they're both under 10. It's just that if one of them might be, but those are all things that we look at, yeah. Any questions, comments beyond that?
The increase in enrollments are good.
They are.
That relates to a conversation, next item, actually.
Yep. Okay, so
Can I ask a clarification question on that though, with the increase in enrollment, especially from August, how much of it do you think is related to sanctuary status in the area? And my point being that may not have been.
we have had some new students moving in who, probably are attracted to this area because of that, but we have all kinds of students. I mean, there's a lot of coming and going in our schools. Some of it's university related, some of it's not. So we've seen probably a growth of around, I think our growth from, I'd have to pull it, actually I have it right here. Like Lisa said, we're at 37 right now for MLL. And oh, it's hard to tell on this. I can't tell exactly on this. I thought I could. Oh wait, I can. So in October, we were at 24 or 20, yeah, 24. So we've grown since October by 13.
None of in the 9th grade, the difference between what was projected and what we have, none of those students would fit into that category.
Anything else?
Ready to move to budget?
So I put a handout, it wasn't in the folder, just on your table. I have some extra right here, for our budget conversation. Really, we're just looking at some high level pieces tonight. We're gonna do a more detailed look at everything next meeting. So 2 pieces tonight to talk about. One is what are some big budget impacts we're seeing as we're putting together the budget? And when I used the filter for this, it was what are 5-figure new things that we're seeing in the budget this year? And that's the list you see at the top. This year we added an MLL, I said ELL on the page, it's MLL. We added an MLL ed tech. And just based on what we're seeing in terms of how the programming and assessment needs to be provided to students, we really need to shift that to a second teacher instead of an ed tech. The ed tech can't do any of the assessment functions that have to be done, and there's a lot of assessment that has to be done with MLL students. So because that was not in the budget at all, we had already added though early mid-fall the ed tech. So everything is new to the budget though, since it was an unbudgeted item. We're requesting, and we've talked about this last several years, and this year I'm feeling more convinced than ever that we really need to add capacity back to the central office that we cut, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. Just all kinds of reasons, but the addition of the 3-year-old programming and some new financial reporting and tracking that's going to need to happen with that is the thing that for me tips it over the edge. But in addition to that, I mean, our central office takes on oversight for all the reporting and has to do quite a bit with that. And it really is a load, particularly for our finance side of the office that has you know, is tangentially related to finance for sure, because all that data or much of that data determines our finances. But we just can't keep up with things the way we want to, with everything else that has been added to the plates. The ELA curriculum we've been talking about, our teachers have been reviewing curriculum for English language arts, reading, writing at Ace Adams, and they have narrowed their review down to 2 programs, and the estimates of those are in the $150,000 range. There are a lot of pieces to those programs. And so we talked with those 2 companies about having that spread over 2 years. So it would be around $75,000 each year. So that's the ELA curriculum. We feel like we need to add another van, and in particular, we need it to be an accessible van. We have a couple of students who would benefit from that, especially just with some special transportation needs that we periodically need to do. But we just need another van in general. Now that we have vans, there are all kinds of ways we can see the use for vans to help us not have to pay for extra things from our transportation provider that are really expensive. When we need some special transportation, it's very expensive through our provider. We're looking at, and I don't think this is a good number yet, the tennis court resurface. Mike Archer feels like we should just go ahead and do a tennis court resurface / repaint, not like it's just mainly a strip down and repaint of all of the courts. But he is getting some other quotes because we didn't feel like that was quite accurate, but that's a placeholder for now. And that is, you know, we talked about the pickleball remediation. That's just an interim solution. So this would actually be a professional painting of all of the courts, and to be able to have pickleball integrated with that in a professional way.
Can we build a town for it?
It wasn't a Townsville.
Wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for their mini grants.
Oh, well, okay. I don't think we can, no.
Fortunately.
Because we,
Keeps on giving.
yeah, we approved that.
Not every.
Right. Let the record reflect, yeah. We have had a lot of issues with our network this year. We changed providers this year and trying to improve some things with our network because our contract was up with our other provider. And what they're telling us is that we need to replace our wireless access points, that they're end of life and aren't supported with updates. So it's a big project. It's, Jason says, around $40,000, but it is a significant issue for our schools to have constant drops of network. So that's what that's about.
I'll just say when I Zoom, I'm kind of shocked at how bad the internet is at the schools.
Yeah, it's
I
bad.
mean, everybody has drops, but it's worse here than it is with most institutions.
Yeah, and
That's not good.
no. The last 4 things are all special ed related. I clustered them together. The special ed tech at OMS, we added that a month and a half or so ago. We came to you with that request. So this is just adding that into the budget. We are seeing an increased cost for our contracted services, both increased time that we're needing to do some of these evaluations that Lisa's talking about, you know, that we have lots of evaluations going on, but also the rates are increasing. And so we're seeing an impact to the budget of expected $79,000 next year. And that's across psychological contracted services, OT, PT, behavior analysts, and speech services. Those are all the areas that we contract. Actually, I didn't mean to put the transportation bid estimated increase. That's not specially related. That's just an estimate of what we might expect to be in any increase in our transportation costs, but we'll know more once we get our bids in.
Is there actually a real possibility that we might get more than one bid?
Well, he has talked with a vendor who said they were interested in bidding.
First,
I can't, I shouldn't say.
sorry,
What-
my bad.
Yeah,
But we haven't had more than one bid.
right. Not since I've been here, and I just don't think there've been a lot of vendors around that had capacity. There are some other vendors, but they're usually small operations that just do maybe one district or two districts.
Then there are larger vendors, but not in this part of the state.
Right.
Usually.
Yeah. And we are projecting a slight increase for out-of-district placement needs for special education. So, you know, when you look at all those impacts, those are the large buckets. Now, across the whole budget, there are ups and downs in other ways, you know. Almost every, 10 lines, there's an up and down of some sort, right? Just that's the way that budgets work. But you'll see more of the total impact next meeting. But the goal of this is just to begin to give you some context for some of the big drivers. Just wanted to put down the salary impacts that we're seeing right now. The contracted salary amounts, you see the percentages there. These estimates are not actual estimates. I would have to get more specific data on that. These are just estimates that we used when we were negotiating, when we were determining impact. So they're definitely not completely accurate, but they're in the ballpark of accurate. And I just wanted to give you a sense for what that meant in terms of dollars. The non-CBA employees, that's a smaller set that's easier for me to calculate. You can see that we're estimating 3% there. The health insurance impacts, we are estimating a 10% increase. We'll find out, in early April, what the actual percentage is. This year it was 5.73. But there have been years that it's been 9, and there have been years that it's been 0. So it's hard to project what that's going to be. Dental insurance, we projected at 4%. I'll have to find out from Michelle and Sue what that equates to in terms of how much 4% increase would be. There, on the positive news, there are around $85,000 worth of one-time expenditures that we earmarked or identified last year and said, those are one-time expenditures and we are going to pay for those out of unassigned. So those will all come out of the budget now. I didn't list them all. It was a list of around 12 or so items. We have the opportunity to do that this year, but that's a conversation for later in the budget talks. And then on the flip side, around a week and a half ago, we got our state subsidy from the state, the report, the ED 279 that we call it, where we get the details of what state money we're going to get this year. However, there are words on it in lots of places that say this is preliminary because, it's based on the proposed budget. And if you've read the news at all or watched the news, you know that there's a lot of talk about the budget and some of the ways that the governor's proposing to raise money to fund the budget. So we don't know what's going to happen with the budget and if there will be any adjustments to this, but we plan based on this until we're told something else. So we've been in these uncertain times, plenty of budget cycles before. But the news that we have from the preliminary is positive. So we're seeing a almost $700,000 increase in state subsidy. And when I look through the details and Brian looked through the details, there are a lot of reasons that, they're pointing to why our numbers went up, our subsidy went up. We had strong enrollment for residents. So just to be clear, the tuition student drop has nothing to do with our ED 279. That's just in tuition revenue. That's on a different line. So the data that's in our ED 279 is strictly based on resident enrollment. So our resident enrollment's really strong in Orono. So we have strong enrollment and I feel like our identification was the best it's ever been around students who would qualify for low income, low SES designation. And Lynn did a lot of work to make sure that we weren't missing students through lots of different qualifiers like state agency clients and lots of lists that we have that, you know, you find kids that have been dropped from roles and we're not getting subsidy for them in some of these, add-on subsidy places. Also our MLL numbers, that helps our subsidy, that will help pay for, you know, the increased services we're trying to implement. And then special ed, we did see increase in special ed. Unfortunately, it doesn't keep pace with what we're seeing for an expenditure, escalation, but we are seeing some recapturing of the increased costs. Brian, was there anything you'd add to that you saw in the data?
I mean, the other factor is the valuation of the properties in Orono, and it was a big jump. It was 10%, which I've been worried about because they did this whole revaluation exercise. But I think the property values in Southern Maine jumped so much more than they jumped here that it actually our valuation as a proportion of the state valuation actually declined, so that helped us too. Got it plugged in, but
Yeah.
that's what I saw.
Additionally, the local required, there was a slight decrease of 18,000. It really doesn't impact us a whole lot because we always do extra local. But in terms of, it wasn't, you know, last year we saw kind of a lower state subsidy and an increase in local required. So it was nice to see the opposite happening this year. So that's the kind of high level, big picture. I think is there a,
Right there.
do you have any questions or wonderings about this?
Wondering.
Yeah.
I don't know the scale of it, but it's out of the wellness committee and it's its way up yet, but there's this question about a water fountain in the east of the cafeteria. That's something, you know.
Yeah, so that's on the list, but that would be a 5-figure.
I had no idea what scale it was.
Yeah, it's definitely not 5 figures, yeah. It's
Fancy ones.
I want to be
Be a
in the
very
water
nice
fountain
water
business. Yeah, it's true.
Well, yeah, yeah,
Good, okay.
yeah, it's on. Any other questions, wonderings? The details are coming, so
Yeah.
this is not the details yet. So next meeting, we'll have the big picture of where we stand, like if we funded everything that's been asked for, that, you know, we've done some cleanup in the budget, this is what the picture would look like. And so that's what the next meeting, really, you get a lot more information. Usually there's not much to talk about at this meeting, but it gives you some background to know some of the big pieces, so.
And if I'm understanding this right, like the estimated big picture increase is about the same, expenses is about the same as the estimated increase revenue, sort of.
You cannot take that from this. No, because this is just some big impacts, not all of the little ones.
Which might add up to be more.
Yeah, I actually don't know yet, because we're still working on that.
Yeah, I mean, small changes other places, but there's 600 of those small changes, so which way they try and get stuff
And
a big
there's
impact.
ups and downs, so.
Even here, though, you're about 300,000 over.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Expenses over the new revenue, so
put it
even,
down and throw
Oh, I
in
didn't have
insurance.
that column. It was
so you even with this, which you can't really do much with, but
Yeah.
we're still up.
Yeah.
It's better than good,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah,
And it's, you know, just fall apart again without all these little things, so this is the preliminary number, but it's like a 6% increase, so. But we'll see all of it. For those of you who've been around for a while, there's stages to this process.
But it's too early to get nervous about it.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know where the tuition numbers are coming in. Insurance is a worst case scenario. At the moment, which often doesn't actually turn out to be worst case. Sometimes it does.
Who knows, maybe there'll be no federal money for anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can be nervous, but for different reasons.
No, you can be nervous about all kinds of things, but this sheet's not one of them.
No.
Right. The uncertainties are high, but the average values, right, the black and white numbers that are in front of us are looking reasonable.
And Brian and I looked, when we were talking about this, our unassigned is at 2.7 million after the audited amount. Now, we did increase the amount we were using to fund the budget by 100,000. So we brought it up from 829,000 to 929,000 this year. So that's a difference.
I'll put in, I bet that we have at least 2.4 million in the next audit. So that's still a high number.
Yeah.
One thing we might want to think about is we want to take a little bit of that, a little bit more of that and add it to the capital improvement. And I know we're trying to stay ahead of things, but I worry that given the cost of everything going, that we actually may be falling on it.
Yeah, it's definitely a cover.
Not for now, but something to think about.
If it weren't for what's happening at the federal level,
No,
it would
I
be all
agree.
down, we have to be spending that
No,
down, and it's either taxes or capital
No,
improvement.
I agree.
With what's happening at the federal level, I probably spend it down a little bit less than I would
Yeah,
have.
you're right. That's unfortunate.
So,
And I'm kind of in a holding pattern with, in my mind, waiting on the word from the DOE on our OMS construction application. Because if we have an unfavorable position on the list, we have to completely rethink our capital improvement list and how we fund it. Because a whole list of things will need to be added.
We get an unfavorable outcome there, we're screwed. There's so much stuff, we've kicked it
and
down
yeah,
the
we
road.
still have to open the doors, so,
I mean,
yeah,
we
you're
can't
right.
wait for the next cycle, I don't think, on that, on a lot of that stuff.
I mean, just to be more direct, if we get an unfavorable, we're gonna have to raise taxes to do some stuff that are all about. Yeah,
So
so hope for.
I guess I would rather, another reason to probably defer that discussion of capital improvement beyond where we are, what we're doing right now, $500,000 a year, I think is helping us, chip some things off the list, but the list keeps growing. Like we keep adding things to the list. So. Okay, more to come next meeting. The fun begins.
All right, board 360 survey, I just put it in the folder, or had Rachel put it in the folder this afternoon. But we do have to agree on the survey before I send it out. We do it every year. So there's 3 sections. The middle section, I think probably doesn't change. It's basically asking how we do on each of our core responsibilities like fiscal and hiring and buildings and stakeholders and curriculum and policies. The first section has been constant for a long time. It's our core values of meet students where they're at, move them forward. Value of the whole student, social, emotional, physical, creative, and fostering a growth mindset that embraces challenges, takes appropriate risks, and learns from failure, enjoys learning. All of which is pretty consistent with our strategic plan, but it's not exactly aligned with our strategic plan. So one strategy is just to say, you know what, these things still capture what we're asking in the strategic plan. We're just going to keep the same 3 questions, at least for this year, with maybe an eye next year towards aligning with a strategic plan. Or we try and align it with a strategic plan. It's not so obvious to me that we align it to in the strategic plan. We have the 5 values, right? The circle. We have the 4 student portrait of the learner. We have a mission statement, right? We could try and align it with any one of those things, but none of them jump out at me. But that's a section for discussion. And then we also asked about specific goals. 3 goals we asked about last year were implementing a DEI plan. That goal is probably not the most current, not to say that we don't have an active DEI program, but that's maybe not the goal we asked about. Working to challenge and stretch all students. And then we asked, also, we just had a feedback question, not a goal, but current state of school and community, how important do you think it is to prioritize time and resources for student mental health? Right, so first section, we really should align it with a strategic plan, but it's probably not an easy thing to do, so we just kick the can down the road here. Or maybe we don't, and the last section, we need to figure out which goals we want to well, our goals were the strategic plan, so. Maybe that's the place to start to align with the strategic plan, was picking our goals off. The strategic plan goals.
The value in the kids, are you tracking things over time? Like,
So,
keep the questions the same year to year, or?
the first two sections have been constant since we started
Like,
this.
I guess my question is their value, and go back and grab that and see.
I have the data. I do not graph it on a regular basis. On the other hand, Mark and Jake and I think probably all have a pretty clear idea of the trend lines and where we are,
So,
whether we're up or down in a given year.
so I guess that's the question, it's like, do we wanna maintain that history more to see how things have changed, or do I switch the questions and start over?
And the other question is just capacity to switch the questions. If you all want to tell me to go come up with questions along with the strategic plan, I'll do that, but traditionally the board has wanted significant input and process around what this questionnaire looks like.
I looked it over today and I thought other than swapping goals out, I thought it looked pretty good. And I actually did bring up the strategic plan and thought from it is there, how could we incorporate this in here? I don't see an easy way to do that. Doesn't mean it can't be done. But I think it would need more thoughtful consideration than we have with the timeline. Thank you. That's my opinion.
Yeah, that's kind of where I came down to. Are people okay with keeping the first section and just redoing the third section? That's the section that traditionally changes. We could just put the 6 goals that we have in the strategic plan as 6 goals, which would make a slightly longer survey. Or we could ask, we could pick a few of the goals in the strategic plan, right? We have the engaged learning and critical thinking. We have individual student pathways. We have connection to families.
Growth mindset.
We have the growth mindset. We have
Well-being.
well-being and basically DEI are the 6 goals.
I think well-being and the individualized pathways are ones that have gotten a fair amount of attention this year and where things have been done.
Yeah.
So those two might be, not that you should only ask about things that have been done, but there are some elements of the strategic plan that are further ahead than others are. And those two strike me as areas where maybe we're further ahead.
Maybe we should ask about those.
I would certainly go for that, but at the same time, if somebody wanted to say, let's put all 6 of them in, I'm okay with that too.
I mean, I find your argument pretty compelling. I'm also kind of curious, really, the first question about engagement and critical thinking. More not as do you think the board's done well, but just how do you think the district is doing on this one? How much growth do you think we have in this area? I would make 3, that would be the traditional number if we did. How's the board been doing on individual pathways? How's the board been doing on well-being? And how well do you think we're doing currently on engaged learning and critical thinking? So do people think about that?
I like that.
And not do all 6 just because survey fatigue kind of stuff.
Try and keep it short, yeah. I mean, we have surveyed DEI for 3 or 4 years straight.
Yeah, I mean, I might lean towards, yeah, not doing DEI. Maybe.
I'd say the other ones we're missing are the growth mindset and the community parent connection.
Like, I guess I guess I'm interested in community and parent connection.
Or we could just add that
And
one.
there's already growth mindset at the top. Right?
Yes, it is.
So I guess I'm a little like, I'm not quite sure that these things don't all blend together. First and third section, in terms of how people think about it. Right? So, yeah, feels like, yeah. We don't need to do that one twice.
I guess if I were gonna pick one more, I would pick the kind of parent connection one, because that's not really addressed community parent.
Yeah, I agree.
We could make that a temperature question, like the engaged learning critical thinking question. Okay. And I guess we could reword the front section a little bit, so you don't claim that these are 3 adopted values anymore, but just values that have emerged out of years of discussion that we're gonna continue the survey about. People happy with that? People want to see, well, I mean, I can certainly circulate a copy by email, but people need to see this back at a board meeting before we send it out.
Yeah, I trust you to do it, but if other people want to see it, it's fine.
Okay,
Same.
all right, I'll send it by email with at least 48 hours to screen, but trying to think. Whether we send it out before or spanning across the vacation week.
I think sometimes a span and typically it has.
It has spanned typically, I think.
Because
Try and
we're
get
trying
it
to
out.
get this one done and then mine and then the
Yeah,
administrators.
so try and get it out with at least a full week before the vacation and then a couple of days after the vacation. Is that, they both?
The last year it was sent out on the 13th of February,
Okay,
which was the Tuesday before break last year.
all right. I might try and get it to the Monday, but which would be the 10th. Do you know how long it was available? It probably says, no, I'd have to go look at the email. I'm trying to remember. Closes on the 27th. So we
Yes.
gave from the 14th to the 26th, so it was just 2 weeks. I think we give from the 10th to the or 24th or 25th. Right, a couple days after they come back, that would be optimal.
Yeah, that's what it was last year.
Yeah, okay.
I guess the question, I love the wording, like the specific goals for the year, like the way this is structured, I don't know if we. Set the 4 things we're gonna, are you gonna reword that a little bit, or like?
Yeah, I'd probably phrase it as strategic plan. Okay. School calendar,
I have two, we have two drafts right now for you to take a look at and just react to. And, there's some things that are similar about them and, mainly one thing is different. So I apologize that the color on this, the pink and the red is not distinguishing. So the only red day is June 15th, last day of school. The other things that look like red are the board meetings that are supposed to be pink. So, that, just a point of clarification there. So the start of the calendar is very similar. We are proposing to shift our early release days to the first Wednesday of the month. While there's no Wednesday that's perfect, we feel like that more often moves it away from weeks where there are other holidays for students. So you don't have an in-service day or have an early release, have a school day, and then have a day off for students. The kind of big change structurally for this calendar, both calendars, we're proposing to remove an in-service day on January 16th. That's been our mid-January in-service day, and replace it with our staff working an extra hour on 7 of our early release days. Several reasons for that. One, January is a very choppy month with lots of interruptions to the flow. We feel like we'd like to try something different with that day, and early releases, having another hour can give us more possibilities of the kinds of things we can build some momentum for during that time and accomplish things with more time and momentum. And it also gives us a little more time during those days that we have all staff in the district being able to meet together when needed. It's not perfect because ASA gets out an hour after, OMS and OHS, but there'll be more time that they're all there if we needed to use an early release time for that purpose. That's probably the least compelling thing because it's still just, you know, a portion of the time. The other reasons I mentioned are the primary reasons we're wanting to try this. It would require an MOU with the OEA because we're extending their workday. And we've been in conversation with Shauna and the OEA about that. And I think there's interest on the other side to trying this out as well. But they like I'm doing tonight, need to talk with their board and consider that as well. The main thing that's different across the two calendars is the school days around Christmas, New Year. And just a reminder that we have to be aligned within our we're supposed to be aligned in our UTC region across all the districts that have high schools within 5 calendar days. And our folks internally really like the idea of having students out that whole week, 2 whole weeks, basically. Just the way that things fall and, you know, what we know about engagement and families electing to travel and how many absences and things like that. And the way staff are feeling if they're in school. At that time of year, it just felt like the right year to try to do 2 weeks out. That's our preferred option.
For number 2. Of these.
I can't remember which one's labeled with.
Number 2 is the longer
Number
break.
draft 2
Yeah.
is.
The longer break.
Yes.
Yes, that's the preferred option from all the feedback we've gotten internally.
I can't imagine why anybody would even consider draft 1, like you're gonna be out. You're gonna be out that entire week and then have people come back in for an in-service day on Friday the 2nd.
And that's so the in-service day is a deceiving one. That's the trade out day for conferences. So staff won't be in on that day.
Okay, so so that's not really an in-service.
No, but we always show it as such.
Okay, so.
Yeah.
It's less bad, but it's still.
Yeah, either way, staff are out on January 2nd. On the option 2, we just moved that day to the front of the calendar, the front of that break. But in the UTC region, no one else is doing this.
Nobody else is taking the longer break.
Right,
We're really gonna have kids in schools on the 23rd.
everyone. And so that's
I couldn't
it's
pay
still.
me to teach on the 23rd.
I know, we're just imagining the absentee rate we're gonna have and the level of dissatisfaction we're going to
But
have.
half the kids will be absent, the other half will be, you know, climbing through
Yeah.
the roof, so.
I think
So-
this looks like a no-brainer.
Yeah, I was shocked and, you know, no one's willing to consider it, so.
So it puts us, what, 2 or
Just-
3 days out of the 5?
2 days out of the 5.
We
So
take
we're
it.
okay
Yeah.
doing this.
Not, we don't have clearance yet. We're still talking in the region, but I'm getting your feedback like tonight as a preliminary kind of, you know.
What happens if we don't get clearance, we do it anyway?
And that's part of the discussion. Like, that's part of the
Nothing is
discussion
the
with the
answer,
region.
So let's just do it anyway.
Well, I mean, in the region, I mean, we're not the only one causing problems, right? Because you have districts that don't go to school until Labor Day, that causes 2 problems right off the bat, 2 days right off the bat. So there's some other things that Amanda, the UTC director, has in mind to maybe get us where everyone can do what they want, but we can find some ways to mitigate the 5-day issue.
That's
So-
great if they can, but if not.
So that's what is being worked on. Were you gonna add that, or you were gonna say something?
Oh, no.
Oh, I thought I was.
I'm just enjoying the commentary, sorry.
Oh.
Well, I've never seen Mark this excited about the calendar.
I'm still gonna vote no.
Oh.
You also like the extra hour on the early release days.
You like something about it earlier?
I do, well, I don't like early
Let-
release days.
let-
I like the extra hours. I think that's.
You got him, really. You got him to say yes for a second before
I'm
you
still gonna
remembered.
vote no, but this is like gonna be the best calendar that I'm gonna vote no on.
So any other feedback thoughts,
So no,
we've talked about, let me just say, sorry, it's one of the things floated in my mind. We talked about, so what if in the region we have to give up a day? Do we want to just have a student day on the 22nd and not have school the 23rd? And we're just, that's almost like worse.
Yeah.
So,
But
Anyway.
they can't make us do that, right? When push comes to shove, they can't make us do it.
well, and that's part of what Amanda says. She said, I can't override local school boards, and if we're over, we might just have to go to Augusta and say, we're sorry, we're over. What,
Right, they can, in theory, I think they have a penalty, but they've never chosen to invoke that penalty.
So the like. Sort of consensus calendar, there isn't like a starting point. It's like where did everyone start out with, and then.
for the regional calculation of how many days are dissimilar.
Yeah, like. what-
Yeah, it actually is when UTC starts the calendar. So UTC starts, UTC starts on the 28th is when they start their programming. So any districts that are not in session that day, that's the first dissimilar day. So we have 2 districts in our region that routinely start on the day after Labor Day. So those are 2 dissimilar days every year. So she's going to propose something to them that they could do that could get their kids in school those days. They could ask their kids to attend, and we could, say that those aren't dissimilar because they're gonna ask their UTC kids to attend. But in the end, I think Amanda felt like boards are gonna do what they're gonna do in the end, and sometimes we have to explain to the DOE, and they might ask us to do better next time, kind of thing. I mean, usually we're not this far off, but I don't know, it's hard to go along with the region on this one.
Were there other differences between the two countries?
No, it just impacts the last day. So when we have the 2 days off on December 22nd, 23rd, it pushes the last student day, which is a bit arbitrary anyway, to June 15th. And then in the version where we go to school on 22nd, 23rd, we have the last day of the 11th.
Which I also think is good, because what if, let's say that you went with version 1, the last scheduled student day is, whatever it is, the 11th. Then something happens, because we go over, we use extra Sundays, then you gotta make people come in on the 15th, and then we're planning on it. And it's better to let them out early, right? Like, oh, it was gonna be the 15th, but oh, now you get out to the 12th. So,
Well, it's more just like you include that week. It's still the same number of days.
Yeah, it's the same.
Yeah, same number of days. It just depends on how many.
People that are gonna book plane tickets to leave. The 13th or 14th is pretty high, but if you put out a calendar with the 15th is the last day, they're gonna book their tickets for the 17th.
It just depends on our weather cancellations.
Do we,
Well,
I forget, do we end up changing it? Like last, like where are we at this year?
We've only had 1 cancellation so far this year. Last year, I can't remember. I have to look at the calendar.
Exam week was a nightmare last year.
I can't
It was
remember. Did we
awful.
add days last year?
Well, exam week, we had a lot of 2-hour, and then we had a full day, we were trying to move it all around.
Yeah, I can't
Exam week
remember.
was awful last year.
But some years we've had to add, some years we don't. Some years it's just right. So,
Some years we had kids go to school.
yeah, I think one of my first years, we had to make up time. Cause we were gonna have seniors without enough days.
Sometimes they go away, right? So you never know.
Snow days are just unpredictable, or cancellation days, I should say.
Draft 2 for sure.
Agreed.
Thank you for your feedback. We have a UTC meeting next week, so hopefully
Oh,
I'll,
2 days.
well, it's the superintendent meeting.
Right.
And we're talking about this and the credit thing that I talked about. So probably late February, I'll have some feedback from that. I don't think calendar's on your agenda.
Oh, you're ahead of me. I hadn't looked at it.
I looked, so I was curious.
I know I need 2 days, but I don't know what we're doing.
So next up, we have a co-curricular nomination. I'd make a motion to approve the slate as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Just for the record, it's unified coach Kevin Mansfield. Any discussion or questions? Go ahead and vote.
I just had one question. Is this person a staff member in school?
Mhm. Long time, ed tech at the high school. And I coached unified last year, I think.
Yeah.
Basketball. Basketball.
It's a way for special ed students to participate in sports.
And then maybe there's like other students participate as helpers. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a great program. Okay, all those in favor? Passes 5-0. Next up, we have reports. Policy Subcommittee is this Thursday. We will be looking at FF. That'll hopefully be quick after the board conversation. We'll be looking at administering medications to students, update, finally catching up with state law. And we'll be looking at generative AI. Susan's been leading a committee that's, gone through what's working, what's not working, looking for updates, and has done a nice job pulling the feedback together. Which I would summarize as lots of little changes, nothing that, fundamentally changes the whole policy, but not at all a surprise, lots of things that we hadn't thought about, think about, so.
Are we
There are
gonna,
more models finally emerging.
Yeah,
are we gonna see like a list of what those little changes at least might be, or are we just gonna go through those at the meeting?
we should, we should try and put Susan's report
Okay.
maybe in the policy
Yeah,
folder.
I'll just put that in the folder.
UTC, you kind of got it.
Yeah, we're meeting 2 days.
Yep.
I'll report back.
Curriculum Subcommittee, I don't think anything's happened since last time, meet a week from Thursday. Wellness Committee,
Yeah, we met, we had a good productive meeting, we talked about the lack of water fountains in the cafeteria in East Adam, and that might get fixed potentially. And talked about like concerns about school breakfast, it's like being too sugary and not very healthy, and what we can do about that and the limitations that we don't fully understand, and yeah, other thing, we talked too about like what we can do. There's some students that are sort of don't have enough food and we don't have the resources to provide for them fully, and sort of big things we could do around that. So just had some conversations about potential future. But hopefully we can $100,000 water fountain.
gold plated. All right, strategic plan leadership has not met since the last update.
Meet at the end of February.
End of February, yeah. Any other business? Requests for future agenda items? Any public comment? Our next meeting is Tuesday, February 25th. Note the, 3-week skip because of the vacation. And it will be 6 o'clock in the library and on Zoom. Are there any requests for information or follow-up? I would motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Passes 5-0. Thank you, everybody. Good night.